Something fundamental shifted in the mathematics of modern war on the night of August 17th, 2025. In a secret factory somewhere inside Ukraine, a country that had been absorbing Russian missiles for over 3 years, photographs began circulating of a weapon that nobody had officially confirmed existed. The images showed a massive airframe, 6 meters wide, 12 to 14 meters long, painted with a stripe of pink that clung to it from a test accident and was never entirely cleaned off. The weapon had a name that sounded almost whimsical against the backdrop of a grinding industrial war, the Flamingo. But there was nothing whimsical about what it could do. With a warhead weighing 150 kilograms, a range of 3,000 kilometers, and a unit cost a fraction of its American counterparts, Ukraine had just announced to the world and to Moscow that the war had entered a new and far more dangerous chapter. To understand how Ukraine arrived at this moment, you have to go back to the beginning, not just to February 2022, when Russian armor crossed the border in what the Kremlin called a 3-day operation, but to the deeper strategic logic that Ukraine was forced to confront from day one. Russia had more tanks, Russia had more artillery, Russia had more aircraft. What Ukraine had was necessity, and from necessity, over 3 relentless years, it built something that no Western defense ministry had managed to produce: a living, breathing, combat-proven ecosystem of unmanned warfare that is now reshaping military doctrine across the entire planet. From a pre-war base of roughly 10 drone manufacturers, Kyiv built an ecosystem of several hundred producers, turning a state under attack into the world's leading industrial power in unmanned systems. By 2025, Ukraine was producing roughly 4 million drones per year, a level that exceeded the combined output of all NATO members. Think about that figure for a moment. A nation fighting for its survival, with cities under bombardment, and its energy grid deliberately targeted, was out-manufacturing the entire Western alliance in the weapons that now decide wars. The transformation didn't happen by accident. It happened because Ukraine had no alternative. The battlefield that forged this industrial revolution was unlike anything military theorists had modeled. Analysts estimate that drones account for roughly 70% of battlefield losses for both Russian and Ukrainian forces. The humble FPV drone, a racing quadcopter rewired for war, costing as little as $500, became the weapon that destroyed million-dollar tanks and erased years of Russian logistical planning. Almost every Ukrainian brigade developed dedicated drone units for reconnaissance, artillery spotting, and attack missions. The front line stopped being a line on a map. It became a contested volume of 3-dimensional space, surveilled and struck from above at all hours by weapons small enough to carry in a backpack. But Ukraine was building towards something larger. While the FPV revolution was rewriting the rules of close combat, Ukrainian engineers were working on a different problem entirely. How do you reach the Russian rear, the arms factories, the fuel depots, the airfields where long-range bombers were being fueled and loaded for strikes on Ukrainian cities, when you don't have the Air Force to do it? The answer came on the night of June 1st, 2025, in an operation that the world would come to know as Operation Spider's Web. That single operation deployed 117 FPV drones launched from inside Russian territory itself, damaged 41 aircraft across 4 separate air bases, and according to President Zelensky, struck approximately 34% of Russia's strategic bomber fleet in a single night. It was the most destructive attack on a strategic bomber force since the Second World War, and it was carried out not by stealth fighters or ballistic missiles, but by cheap open-source drones guided by software that any enthusiast could download for free. The psychological impact inside Russia was profound. The Tu-95 Bear bomber, a Soviet-era platform that had been launching cruise missiles at Ukrainian power stations, was suddenly vulnerable on its own runway. The strike forced Russia to begin dispersing its long-range aviation assets, spreading them across more distant bases, complicating their logistics, and reducing their operational tempo. A coordinated strike operation earlier that year used more than 100 custom-designed drones smuggled into Russian territory to attack several strategic bomber bases simultaneously, destroying or damaging dozens of aircraft and forcing Russia to disperse its long-range aviation. Ukraine had demonstrated something that decades of Western defense planning had not adequately considered, that strategic deterrence could be punctured not by pure military power, but by asymmetric precision, ingenuity, and a willingness to accept operational risk. Yet even as the drones were rewriting the offensive calculus, Ukraine faced an existential threat from above. Russia, unable to break Ukrainian ground resistance, turned to industrial-scale aerial bombardment. Night after night, swarms of Iranian-designed Shahed drones, now manufactured in Russia in enormous quantities, descended on Ukrainian cities and power infrastructure. As Russia's all-out war entered its fifth year, Ukraine's drone interception rate stood at around 80%. That figure represents one of the most remarkable feats of improvised air defense in modern military history, but it didn't come from Patriot batteries or billion-dollar missile systems. It came from a solution Ukraine invented almost entirely from scratch in the interceptor drone. Interceptor drones are a Ukrainian innovation that changed the rules of the game in air defense, emerging as a direct response to the intensification of enemy air attacks as the adversary increasingly used massive swarms of strike drones against Ukrainian cities and civilian infrastructure. The concept is brutally efficient. Send a small, fast, semi-autonomous drone to hunt down and destroy incoming Shaheds before they reach their targets. Ranging from 1,000 to 4,000 euros each, these interceptors are dramatically cheaper than Shahed drones, which can cost between 25,000 and 40,000 euros, and incomparably cheaper than a single Patriot missile, which runs to approximately 3.5 million euros per round. The economic logic is devastating. Ukraine was destroying its enemy's weapons for pennies on the dollar. Ukraine's interceptors can fly at speeds between 195 and 280 miles per hour, depending on the model, and are compact enough to fit inside a duffel bag. The Wild Hornet's Sting, one of the flagship systems, reached combat deployment with a thermal camera and AI-assisted terminal guidance, capable of engaging targets up to 15 miles away. The Bullet interceptor, developed in late 2025 by Ukrainian weapons manufacturer General Cherry, is driven by a jet engine and 4 rotors, can be 3D printed, and uses AI-assisted guidance to locate targets, traveling at speeds between 130 and 309 kilometers per hour and cruising at altitudes up to 5,500 meters. These are not prototype systems sitting in laboratory conditions. They are mass-produced weapons built in dispersed workshops across Ukraine, shipped to the front within days of assembly, and operated by soldiers who learned their trade under live fire. In 2026, Ukraine increased its production capacity for interceptor drones by 8 times compared to the previous period, with more than 20 Ukrainian companies working in the field. In just the past year, Ukraine produced 100,000 interceptor drones, creating a large-scale, flexible, and economically efficient system to counter Russian Shaheds, with a mission success rate exceeding 60% under real wartime conditions. Last month, Ukrainian interceptors destroyed more than 70% of incoming Shaheds over Kyiv, freeing scarce Patriot missiles for the ballistic threats they were designed to stop. The irony was not lost on Western analysts. The country that had spent years begging for advanced air defense systems had quietly built a new layer of protection at a fraction of the cost, and was now being asked by the United States itself for help in protecting its forces in the Middle East. Zelensky confirmed that 11 countries, including the U.S., Gulf nations, and European states, had requested Ukraine's help, with some requests already met with concrete decisions and specific support. The country that had once been viewed as a recipient of Western charity had become the world's foremost practitioner of drone warfare, and its technology was now being licensed, replicated, and deployed by NATO members who had spent decades and billions on conventional military procurement. The UK deal marked the first time a Western government licensed a Ukrainian-designed interceptor for domestic production, a model that 5 NATO countries, Germany, France, Italy, Poland, and the UK, have since agreed to build upon by jointly developing affordable interceptor drones of their own. But it is the Flamingo that represents the most consequential development of all. Revealed on August 18, 2025, the missile is fitted with a 1,150-kilogram warhead and has a range of 3,000 kilometers, with serial production targeting 210 units per month. Compared to the American Tomahawk cruise missile, which costs between $1.5 and $2.5 million per unit, depending on the variant, the Flamingo carries a warhead almost 3 times bigger at a unit cost significantly lower. With its 3,000-kilometer range, the missile's reach covers Russia's European territory to its full depth and extends to the Ural Mountains and even part of Siberia, placing Moscow, St. Petersburg, Yekaterinburg, and Novosibirsk all within its strike envelope. According to Ukrainian analysts, the missile threatens 90% of Russia's arms manufacturing capacities. The Flamingo's affordability is achieved through simplified design choices, including the use of repurposed Soviet-era AI-25TL turbofan engines from decommissioned Aero L-39 Albatross jet trainers, a carbon fiber fuselage that can reportedly be manufactured in 6 hours, and guidance systems that trade some precision for dramatically reduced cost. This is the defining characteristic of Ukrainian military innovation, not the pursuit of perfect weapons, but the ruthless optimization of effective ones. The Flamingo is not trying to be a Tomahawk. It is trying to be a weapon that Ukraine can build by the hundreds, fire without strategic hesitation, and replace faster than Russia can adapt its defenses. One analyst framed Ukraine's strategic position clearly. The FP5 will likely be used to attack targets that other Ukrainian weapons cannot reach, penetrate, or damage to the same degree with smaller warheads. Being a local product, there are no restrictions on how it can be used. Russia's war is on a clock, and a successful Flamingo program speeds up the clock. That assessment captures the essence of what Ukraine has built over 3 years of total war. Not just weapons, but a new model of military-industrial competition, one built on speed, iteration, cost efficiency, and the radical decentralization of production. In 2025 alone, Ukraine received a record $45 billion in military aid, delivered 3 million first-person view strike drones to its armed forces, and deployed more than 15,000 ground robotic systems to operational units. The sky over Ukraine, and now over Russia, has become a contested, lethal domain unlike anything the architects of modern air power imagined. No formation of troops moves without eyes above it. No supply convoy escapes surveillance. No airbase rests easy. And now no industrial facility within 3,000 kilometers of Ukraine's borders can consider itself beyond reach. A nation that began this war outnumbered, outgunned, and widely predicted to fall within days has spent 3 years building an arsenal that is reshaping the future of warfare. The Flamingo is in the sky. And for those on the receiving end of its trajectory, the mathematics of this war have changed in ways that cannot be undone.